FAA agents halted the jet as Chloe Shaw shouted, "You're stopping my plane, on my mother's word?" Vivian Cross watched from the terminal window, one hand steady on her glass, the other dialing the press. Her granddaughter Piper's scream echoed before her live stream cut to static. Inside, agents confiscated flight logs, devices, and legacy dreams. Vivian didn't flinch. She whispered, "Let the sky take what blood tried to bury." "Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe." The moment should have felt sweet. Vivian Viv Cross stood at the curb of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, her silk scarf knotted just so, a vintage leather weekender at her feet, and a chill of anticipation winding up her spine. Her daughter, Chloe, had insisted on a girls' trip with the whole gang to Aspen, family time before the estate got too complicated. Viv had even worn the pearl stud earrings Charles gave her on their 5th anniversary, back when shipping lanes meant something and people meant what they said. Chloe slid from the black SUV in athleisure that cost more than Viv's first car. Behind her, Gregory adjusted his designer sunglasses like he was allergic to sincerity. Piper, barely looking up from her phone, trailed behind them like a shadow with Wi-Fi. "Here," Chloe chirped, handing Viv a small, resealable plastic bag. Inside, 6 almonds, a packet of dried cranberries, and 2 ginger chews. "For the plane," Chloe said. "We got upgraded last minute, separate boarding for first class. Just meet us at the gate. Aspen, here we come." Before Viv could reply, they'd vanished into the terminal, swept away by TSA pre-check and a tide of curated detachment. Viv walked to gate B14, heels echoing across polished tile. There was no flight to Aspen on the monitor. She checked the paper Chloe had handed her, nothing but her name and a confirmation number that triggered only an error on Delta's kiosk. Her calls to Chloe went straight to voicemail. She waited. 15 minutes, then 30, then an hour. She tried Gregory's number, no answer. She pulled up Instagram to kill time and stopped dead. There they were. Chloe, Gregory, Piper. In a cabin of soft leather and champagne sparkle, captioned, "Family First." Aspen-bound on legacy trip. The photo showed 3 flutes clinking, 4 seats. The empty one faced the camera. Viv sat down hard on a bench near a Hudson News. A child cried somewhere to her left. A businessman sneezed without covering his mouth. Overhead, Flight 437 to Minneapolis began boarding zones 1 through 3. Viv took out the snack bag, looked at it, then slowly stood, walked to the nearest trash can, and dropped it inside without ceremony. She didn't cry, she didn't fume, she just made her way to the airport bar like a woman who had paid for every scar twice, once when it was given, and again when it was ignored. At the bar, she ordered a neat scotch, her voice clear and low. 1 stool away, a man in a pressed uniform nursed a mineral water and watched the departure board. When the bartender set the glass down, the man spoke without turning. "Rough family trip?" Viv smiled bitterly. "Rougher family." He finally looked at her. Steel blue eyes, cropped hair, a calm face trained to keep secrets. Not the sort who offered pity. "Private charters fly out of the South Runway," he said. "If you want out without the baggage." Viv arched an eyebrow. "And who are you, an angel with a jet?" He extended a card. "Devin Marks. Flight Operations, Silver Halo Aviation." "I'm the one who doesn't believe in plastic snack bags," he said. Viv stared at the card, then at the scotch, then at the blinking cursor of her silent phone. A quiet fury bloomed beneath her ribs. Not rage, not sadness, precision. She reached for her wallet. "Let's talk altitude," she said. Devin smiled. Behind them, another flight boarded. Somewhere in the terminal, a boarding announcement echoed and was lost. But for Vivian Cross, the trip had just begun. And no one knew she was already changing the itinerary. The hangar smelled faintly of jet fuel and power. Not the kind that comes from title or trophies. This was quieter, sharper, the sort of power that wears wool, tips in hundreds, and doesn't ask for permission. Vivian Cross stepped into the cabin of the Gulfstream G600 like she'd been born to it. Devon held the door, watching her ascend the stairs with a poise that belied her age. Her scarf fluttered in the breeze, ivory silk patterned with ink-drawn maps from her travel writing days. She took in the cream leather seats, the walnut trim, the cold glass of water already waiting. Then she turned to Devon. "How soon can we be in the air?" 20 minutes. I filed the flight plan the moment you nodded." He smiled. Didn't seem like a woman who changes her mind. She dropped into the nearest seat and crossed her legs. "No, Mr. Marks, I change outcomes. They were at 41,000 feet when she made the first call. Put me through to Eli Goodman," she told the concierge tablet, voice crisp. A moment later, the screen flickered. Her longtime attorney's face appeared, eyeglasses askew, cufflinks undone. "Vivian," he said, eyebrows rising. "Where on earth are you?" "Over Georgia," she replied, sipping her scotch. "But I have a feeling Chloe's been somewhere else, namely, my estate paperwork." Eli adjusted his frames. "I was just about to call you. She's been sniffing around. I got a request from Gregory's office asking for a PDF copy of your old will, called it preparatory housekeeping, said you were planning a transition of assets." Viv's grip tightened around her glass. "I said no such thing. I figured. I blocked the request, but Viv, she's clearly laying ground for something. Then so will I." Her tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. She glanced out the window. Clouds like pulled cotton drifted below, soft and deceptive. "Have my legacy binder and most recent trust summaries overnighted to the Wexley Aspen. Use my old author alias if you have to. And tell the notary she'll need snow boots." Eli chuckled, but it faded when he caught the steel in her eyes. "You're serious." "I was left in an airport with a snack bag and a lie. I'm past serious. I'm ready." He nodded. "I'll send the files by courier tonight." "Good." She ended the call with a flick, then leaned back. The scotch warmed her throat as the jet glided smoothly west. Across the aisle, Devon poured himself a ginger ale. "Everything all right?" She studied him a moment, his restraint, his readiness. "Tell me something, Devon. What made you leave the Air Force?" He hesitated. Then, "They liked order more than justice. I got tired of watching power protect itself." Viv smiled faintly. "Then you'll understand what I'm about to do." "Can't say I know the mission," he said, "but I respect a clean strategy." She nodded once, then closed her eyes for a moment. Her late husband, Charles, had always said there were two kinds of storms, the kind that pass overhead and the kind that rearrange the coastline. Viv wasn't here to pass. Half an hour later, Devon re-entered the cabin with a printout from the resort concierge desk. "Thought you should know," he said. "The Shaw family just landed their private charter out of Van Nuys. They're booked at the Wexley, too." Viv opened one eye. "I assume they expect to arrive before me. They'll be wheels down in 90 minutes. Viv drained the last of her drink, then pressed the recline button with a manicured finger. "Then let's beat them there." Devon raised an eyebrow. "You want me to push us faster?" "No," she said. "I want them to arrive thinking they're first, then find me ordering my second martini." She stretched, her bones cracking like punctuation marks. Let the children play legacy like a game of spoons. Vivian Cross was setting the table, and she had just reclaimed the silver. The Wexley Aspen was all curated charm and deceptive warmth, exposed beams, glass that stretched to the sky, and a concierge desk where the staff wore discreet earpieces and expensive smiles. Vivian Cross stepped through the front doors like she owned the altitude. Devon had already arranged for her suite, top floor, east wing, directly above the one reserved for Chloe and Gregory. Elevation was psychological, and Viv had always preferred looking down on problems rather than up at them. "Shall we unpack for you, Ms. Cross?" the concierge asked, gesturing toward the bellman with her luggage. "No need," Viv said, removing her gloves with surgical grace. "I travel light. I just don't arrive quietly." She was seated in the resort's cocktail lounge 45 minutes later, flanked by two staffers who had clearly taken a liking to her after one round of dry martinis and a story about smuggling pearls through a Singapore checkpoint in the 80s. The air smelled faintly of cedar and citrus. Snow dusted the window panes like powdered sugar. That's when Chloe arrived. Viv didn't turn. She let her daughter approach, heels clicking across Italian tile, that practiced jawline tense behind tinted lenses. "Mother?" Viv sipped her drink before glancing up. "Darling, you made it." Chloe stared, caught between confusion and horror. "How did you—" "I thought—" "Curious," Viv interrupted. "I could have sworn we were flying together. That's what you told me. And yet here I am, and there you are. And no one's carrying a snack bag." Gregory appeared behind Chloe, brows furrowed, phone already in hand like a shield. Piper followed last, her camera-ready face now devoid of filter, surprised, wary. She took in the scene, Viv's proximity to the staff, the prime seating, the ease with which she inhabited the space. Viv smiled at all of them as if hosting an after-party they hadn't been invited to. "Hope your flight was smooth," she said, then turned back to the bartender. "Jason, love, another round, and send one to the couple at the window. They just got engaged." Later in her suite, Viv opened the digital safe hidden behind a painting of elk antlers and retrieved the legacy binder that had arrived by courier an hour before she did. The old trust documents were neatly filed, every tab marked in blue and gold. But one detail stopped her. Page 19, Draft 6, B, Beneficiary Addendum, Piper Shaw, Co-Beneficiary, 30% contingent on academic enrollment and family caretaker provisions. Viv stared at the line like it was a splinter she hadn't known was under her skin. Charles had never trusted Chloe, that was old news, but Viv had once hoped Piper might be different. The next morning, Viv booked a massage, aromatherapy not for relaxation, but reconnaissance. Wealth spoke in hushed spas and linen-wrapped conversations. She'd always preferred her whispers over brunch to her secrets over courtrooms. She was wrapped in a eucalyptus robe, toes soaking in warm salt water, when Piper slipped into the lounge, phone in hand. Her nails were fresh. Her smirk wasn't. "You always pick the same seat," Piper said. "Even when we were kids, like you were reserving the view." "Some things are habit," Viv replied. Piper cocked her head. "Do you even remember the last time you updated your will?" Viv met her eyes. "I remember betrayal, dear," she said softly. "Quite well." Piper blinked, just once. Viv leaned forward. "And in case you're wondering, yes, I've had it reviewed. And no, it doesn't include TikToks, tantrums, or the terminally entitled." Piper rose without responding, her lips a perfect, practiced line. Viv watched her leave, then reached for her tea. It was still warm. Back upstairs, she wrote one line in her journal. They think legacy is something they inherit, not something they destroy. Then she underlined the word destroy, twice. She closed the book, walked to the window, and looked out over the valley. Below her, Chloe's balcony was empty. Above her, the sky was clean and cold, and Vivian Cross smiled, because revenge was a climate, and she'd just adjusted the pressure. The jet cabin was quiet, insulated from the turbulence below. Crisp sunlight flared off the wingtip as Vivian Cross adjusted her reading glasses and tapped the tablet balanced on her knee. On screen, Eli Goodman blinked against the cabin's glare and said, "Viv, you sure you want to do this mid-air?" She sipped black coffee from fine bone china. "Altitude makes the mind sharp, Eli. And I want this done before the ground pulls us back to old habits." The file appeared beside his face. The new will, Draft 7C. She scrolled slowly, eyes scanning every line with the precision of someone who'd once edited travel guides for governments afraid of their own borders. "No bequests to Chloe or Gregory," she said aloud. "No discretionary funds, no fallback trusts. You've checked the revocation clause?" "Twice. This document supersedes all prior versions." She stopped scrolling and exhaled. "Good. Let the snakes hunt in a garden that no longer grows for them." "And the beneficiaries?" Eli asked. Viv tapped the screen. "The Charles Cross Veteran Scholarship Fund, the Marks Aviation Family Grant. A new foundation, Guardians of the Second Sunrise, advocating for elder autonomy and financial protection." "Leave Piper off the primary list," she said quietly. "Pending reevaluation." Eli nodded. "I'll have the notary meet you on return." Viv smiled faintly. "No need." She glanced toward the cockpit. "She's on board." The notary entered the rear cabin 10 minutes later wearing a Wexley housekeeping uniform and a slick of pink lip gloss. No clipboard, no official bag, just a slim folio tucked into the towel cart. Viv raised an eyebrow. "You're early." "I respect a woman with a deadline," the notary replied, already slipping gloves on. Viv retrieved the stylus, signed on the digital line, and then beneath the hard copy, 3 strokes, elegant and exact. The notary sealed the envelope, thumbprinted the tag, and tucked it back into the laundry cart. "Thank you," Viv said. "Thank you," the notary replied. "Most people sign away power. You just reclaimed it." Back on solid ground, Piper let herself into Viv's suite under the guise of returning a robe. Her eyes scanned the room like a hawk, but the safe's keypad had been disabled, the digital documents removed, and every decoy drawer stuffed with decoy clutter. Crossword puzzles, facial rollers, old magazines marked with fictitious notations. Viv, of course, had been expecting her. From the hallway, she watched the girl's silhouette pause at the window, frozen for just a second in uncertainty. Then Piper left. Viv said nothing. That evening, the family met for cocktails on the terrace, a forced tradition, complete with faux toasts and stiff conversations wrapped in mountain air. Gregory leaned in during a lull. "Viv, I've been thinking, we should really consider a family trust, protect everyone, simplify assets. I can draw up something airtight, tax-friendly, of course." Viv swirled her drink. That's generous." "Not at all. It's about legacy, isn't it?" She tilted her head, eyes amused. "And who better to manage a legacy than the people trying to inherit it?" He chuckled, missing the edge. "Exactly. We can structure it in layers, make it clean, invisible even." Viv leaned closer, dropping her voice to a purr. "Make me a proposal." Gregory's face lit. "You're serious?" "Absolutely. But let's keep it quiet for now," she said, patting his arm like she was soothing a dog she didn't trust to heel. "I'd hate for Chloe to feel excluded." Gregory nodded eagerly. Viv turned back toward the snow-dusted peaks, smile fading into something sharper. She didn't need to fight them anymore. She just needed to let them walk into their own design. And when they reached the center, they'd find it hollow, labeled, reserved for ghosts. At 7:12 a.m., Vivian Cross called Eli Goodman from the breakfast nook of her suite, her voice calm and clipped. "Freeze all active accounts under the primary trust. I don't care if it's mid-quarter. Do it." Eli didn't blink. "Understood. All investment withdrawals and distributions? Halted. Should I cite audit?" Viv stirred honey into her tea. "Cite pending restructuring due to beneficiary misalignment. That should raise eyebrows without raising alarms." Eli hesitated. "You think Gregory's going to sniff around?" Viv exhaled softly. "He already has. I'm just letting him catch a trail that goes cold." 3 hours later, at a boutique financial firm tucked into a Manhattan high-rise, Gregory Shaw was pacing. "I don't understand," he barked into the phone. "Why are the disbursements on hold? We're talking routine asset movement, portfolio cleaning." On the other end, a junior associate stammered something about compliance flags and beneficiary reviews. Gregory hung up, jaw clenched. Then he smiled, because a freeze meant a shift, and a shift could be reversed if handled before the paperwork hardened. By lunchtime, Chloe was at Viv's suite, all sugar and suspicion. "You've seemed distracted," she said, crossing her legs on the velvet ottoman like she still owned the room. "Is everything all right, Mother?" Viv looked up from her crossword, glasses perched on her nose. "Just considering some changes." "To the estate?" "No," Viv said sweetly. "To myself. I've been thinking about memory care, proactively, of course, before I get too fuzzy to know what day it is." Chloe blinked once, quickly. "Mother, don't talk like that." "Why not? You've already done so much of the thinking for me." There was a flicker of panic behind Chloe's smile. She adjusted her scarf, grasping for ground. "Well, if you do want help navigating options, Gregory and I know specialists. We'd be happy to take that burden off your hands." Viv smiled gently. "Oh, Chloe, I'm not handing you burden. I'm handing you bait." Chloe tilted her head. "What?" But Viv had already turned back to her crossword. 20 across. False show of concern. 5 letters. She inked in the word, Fane. That afternoon, the housekeeping manager knocked softly. "Apologies, Ms. Cross, but the turndown team mentioned someone was in your suite earlier. Young woman. Claimed to be family." Viv's pulse didn't change. "Did she take anything?" "No, ma'am, but she opened the desk drawer where the folder was last seen, then left when she noticed the security camera in the lamp base." Viv nodded. "Thank you. Please remove the batteries from the lamp and send the footage to room 14D. Name on the envelope, Eli Goodman." Later that night, Viv sat with her journal in front of the fireplace. The pages were full now, legal strategy beside hand-drawn maps, travel memories colliding with revenge planning like a memoir written in cipher. She paused before writing, closed her eyes, and suddenly the past flickered. Piper in glitter sneakers, age 8, leaning over a worn chessboard. "You're the coolest, Grandma," she'd whispered. "Even your checkmate sounds polite." Viv had laughed. That version of Piper had vanished the moment her mother handed her a spreadsheet with projections and percentages. Legacy had turned her granddaughter into a predator in training. Viv picked up her pen, wrote just one line, "The worst thieves don't steal money, they steal mercy." The next morning, Eli called. "I got the footage. It's crystal clear. She was trying to photograph the updated will good," Viv said. "Prepare the fraud inquiry for the state bar. Name Gregory as a co-conspirator. Use the footage as preliminary exhibit." "You're escalating." "I'm documenting." Eli was quiet for a beat. "You're sure?" Viv turned toward the window. The snow outside glittered like broken glass. "Let them feel the ice this time," she said, "and let it crack under their shoes." That evening, as she passed the grand piano in the lobby, Piper looked up from a velvet chair, startled. "Grandma?" Viv didn't slow. She just said, without turning, "Checkmate doesn't always mean the king falls. Sometimes it just can't move." And the lobby door whispered shut behind her. By 8:17 a.m., Chloe was storming the front desk in heels too sharp for mountain carpet. "There's been a mistake," she said, palms flat against the marble. "The card on file should be ours, ending in 0201. You've frozen our reservation?" The concierge, cool as glacier melt, offered a practiced smile. "I'm afraid the reservation has been consolidated under a primary guest account." Ms. Vivian Cross Gregory stepped forward, teeth tight behind a performative grin. "That's impossible. There are financial regulations against this." "Not when the original guest owns the family trust that funded the suite," the concierge replied, scanning her tablet, "and has legal authority over the associated assets." Chloe's hands curled into fists. "She did this on purpose." "Ma'am," the concierge said gently, "we don't engage in family matters. We only honor the reservation that holds legal precedence." Behind them, a couple in fleece jackets whispered to each other, eyes flicking toward the scene like tourists catching a matinee argument. Gregory grabbed Chloe's arm. "Let's regroup." She yanked it away. "She wants us cornered." "She wants us documented," Gregory muttered, "every tantrum on camera." Upstairs, Devin tapped his laptop, the glow of surveillance feeds washing his face in soft white. "Room 212, he said to Viv, who stood behind him, arms folded. "Chloe tried logging into your online archive last night from the spa's guest Wi-Fi. Password guess, *123 twice. Viv's laugh was dry. "How poetic! One bad seed trying to crack the orchard." "She never made it in. I had the access keys rotated before they landed." Viv placed a hand on his shoulder. "Good. Thank you for keeping eyes on the frost line." Devin didn't answer, but he nodded, sharp, certain. By mid-afternoon, Piper struck back. In a TikTok titled, "My Rich Grandma Thinks She's Tony Stark," she strolled the Wexley lobby in a silk robe, mockingly narrating how her paranoid elder was building her own legacy AI to replace real people. Viv watched it silently in the media lounge, earbuds in, laptop balanced on her knees. The video was slick, filtered, sharp, cruel in its humor. But comments told a different story. "This is how financial abuse begins. She took care of you. You treat her like a punchline." Disgusting behavior. By sunset, the hashtag #ProtectViv trended in Aspen. In the lounge that evening, staff passed Chloe without greeting. The bartender, who once smiled tight, offered no refill. The spa attendant refused to adjust Piper's candle scents without proper booking. Viv watched from her window, tea in hand, as the frost between them thickened. It wasn't vindictive, it was natural. The mountain always respected gravity. She found Piper by the sculpture garden just before dusk, phone down for once, watching a crow pick at the snow. "You came to gloat?" Piper asked without looking up. "No," Viv said, "to walk." They stepped side by side through the iced trail, boots crunching. The air tasted of pine and cold truth. "You were different once," Viv said quietly. Piper scoffed. "I was 8. I also believed in unicorns, and that college wasn't a transaction." Viv didn't argue. She simply kept walking. "I'm giving you one last chance," she said finally. "To choose legacy over greed. To be someone who builds, not siphons. You don't have to inherit power to be powerful." Piper stopped, looked her dead in the eye. "You'll be dead before the ink dries anyway." Viv blinked. "Then I'll make damn sure the ink's indelible." Back in her room, Viv opened her laptop. The legal documents glowed like armor. She didn't shake. She didn't rage. She simply typed one note at the top of the final record. "The glacier does not rage. It remembers, and then it erases." Outside, snow fell silently, and in the valley below, the frost began to spread. By 6 a.m., a press liaison from the Cross Foundation stood in the snowy vestibule of the Wexley's business suite, clutching a leather folder and a USB drive like they were keys to a vault. Vivian Cross reviewed the statement with a pen poised like a scalpel. "We are proud to announce a strategic realignment of the Cross legacy toward public empowerment and elder autonomy." She adjusted one clause, tightened a phrase. "Remove the word philanthropy," she told the liaison. "This isn't charity, it's correction." He nodded and disappeared into the snow, headed for the nearest Wi-Fi with a transmission deadline. By mid-morning, the Foundation's official channels lit up with the announcement. A wave of interest followed within the hour. Media queries, boardroom requests. 3 syndicates offered interview slots before lunch. Viv declined them all. She wasn't interested in a victory lap. She was designing the exit ramp. Gregory was in the lobby lounge when a plainclothes courier handed him a manila envelope marked with a single line, "Notice of Inquiry, State Regulatory Audit, Preliminary Findings." He opened it slowly. Inside, 6 pages of questions, none rhetorical, each referencing flagged portfolio movements tied to the Cross Trust over the past 6 months. His hands trembled once before he buried the folder under a throw pillow and walked straight to the bar. For the first time in his life, he didn't order top shelf. Upstairs, Chloe opened her envelope over breakfast, still in silk pajamas, flakes of croissant clinging to her nail polish. The letter was brief, brutal. "Effective immediately, I intend to sever all remaining financial interdependencies between us. The accounting will reflect that choice." Viv. She read it twice. Then a third time. Gregory entered just as she crushed the paper in her fist. "She's doing this," Chloe hissed. "Not quietly, not slowly, just ripping us out like bad wallpaper." Gregory said nothing. He had no more illusions to offer. Eli met Viv in the library lounge with fresh snow on his coat sleeves and the final documents in hand. "Are you sure you want to remove them entirely?" he asked, flipping to the signature page. "There's nothing left. Not a stipend. Not a clause." "Exactly," Viv said. "They didn't ask for connection. They asked for extraction." "And Piper?" Viv hesitated. "She gets one chance," she said finally. "Not as a granddaughter, as a student." That afternoon, Viv met Piper near the resort stables, where the girl had fled after the trending backlash. "I'll fund your college," Viv said. "Not through the family name, through a blind grant. No recognition, no inheritance, just merit and effort." Piper narrowed her eyes. "You think I want crumbs? I think you need a mirror. I need what's owed to me." Viv's face stayed still. "Then you'll go hungry." Piper's laugh was short and joyless. "You can't erase us." Viv turned to leave. "I don't need to. You're erasing yourselves." That evening, in her suite, Viv placed a single white envelope on the desk and addressed it to herself. Inside, a copy of the final will, notarized, stamped, filed. The gesture wasn't symbolic, it was surgical, a reminder that she had rewritten her future with her own hands. She sealed it, then wrote in small cursive across the front, "To the woman who remembered her worth before anyone else did." The next morning, hotel staff discovered that Chloe and Gregory had left in the night. No checkout, no farewell, just a note at the concierge. Forward nothing. Viv sat by the fireplace, pen in hand, writing a new speech for the Foundation's winter gala. Halfway down the page, she paused, because something was gone. Not grief, not bitterness. The echo, the ache of having handed love to people who mistook it for leverage. She exhaled, long and low, and for the first time in months, it didn't turn to frost. Somewhere below, the glacier cracked, but this time, it was letting go. The knock came just after dusk. 3 soft raps, like a child seeking permission. Vivian Cross opened the door to find Chloe alone, cheeks flushed from the wind, or something else. 5 minutes, Chloe said. That's all I'm asking. Vivian stepped aside. Then don't waste a second. Chloe walked into the suite slowly, eyes sweeping over the fireplace, the leather journal on the end table, the single cup of tea. She didn't sit. She hovered, like a woman circling a wound. "I've been thinking about Dad," she began. Viv said nothing. Chloe forged ahead. "Do you remember that Christmas in Charleston? When it snowed for 5 minutes and we all ran outside like idiots?" She gave a small laugh, too rehearsed. "You were wearing those ridiculous red boots. You made peppermint bark from scratch." Viv nodded once. "I remember. I miss that," Chloe whispered. "I miss you." Viv folded her hands in her lap. "You miss the version of me who didn't read ledgers and legal clauses." Chloe blinked hard. "You don't have to do this. Cut us off like strangers. We're family." Viv looked up slowly. "You left me at a terminal with 6 almonds and a lie." Chloe flinched. "You froze me out before I ever touched the vault," Viv continued. "This isn't exile. It's inventory." Chloe's voice sharpened. "You're going to regret this. I've already regretted not doing it sooner." The warmth drained from Chloe's face, her jaw set. "So that's it," she said. "You're rewriting everything, all because you think you're some crusader now, some martyr for old women and veterans and pilots." Viv didn't reply. "You want a headline? Fine, I'll give you one." Chloe's voice dropped into something low and venomous. "I'll tell the press you've been manipulated, that you're showing signs of decline. You'll be the face of elder exploitation instead of empowerment. And once people question your mental state, the courts will too." Viv reached, slowly, for her phone, tapped once. A soft red light blinked on the screen. "Say that again," she said. Chloe's breath caught. "You're just—" She stopped. Started again. "You—" "Just an old woman on borrowed time. You don't even see how ridiculous this is. You think the world cares what you write in your little notebooks?" Viv stood, calm, composed, a flicker of something ancient in her eyes. "Then I better make the next week's count," she whispered. She hit save. Chloe's face crumpled, but she masked it quickly. "You wouldn't—" "I already did." Viv walked to the desk, selected a file from her folder, and slipped the phone inside. "I'll be forwarding this to my lawyer tonight, along with a formal note on the risks of continuing this conversation." Chloe's mouth opened, but no words came. "Doors on your right," Viv said. The silence between them pulsed with something final. Chloe left. No slam, no parting shot. Just the echo of her heels against polished wood. Viv stood alone for a long moment, the room quieter than it had any right to be. Then she walked to the fireplace and added one more log. The flame caught quick, steady. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply watched the burn. Because leverage burns fastest when it's dry, and Chloe Shaw had just handed her the match. Vivian Cross was in the solarium when Eli called. She answered on speaker, letting the sunlight hit her face like armor. They filed it, he said. Chloe claims cognitive decline, mentions paranoia, erratic decision-making. She's requesting a protective review of your estate. Viv sipped her tea, jasmine and salt. So, the daughter who left me at gate B14 now wants to play guardian angel? She filed in Pitkin County Court. They've appointed a psychological examiner. Mandatory evaluation. End of week. Viv set her cup down. Steady. Let them come. Viv? I said let them. The morning of the evaluation, she dressed like a woman testifying to her own legend. Navy wool suit, scarf from her assignment in Marrakesh. No jewelry except the engraved wedding band Charles had insisted she keep, even after death. Devon stood by the door with her briefcase in hand. You're sure you want to bring all that? Viv took it, unzipped the flap, and tapped the contents. 3 first-edition books with her name on the spine, a binder of published travel columns, and a journal tracking her daily schedule for the past 10 months. Let them try to call this madness, she said. I call it memory. The evaluator arrived at the Wexley's conference lounge. Mid-30s, gender-neutral clothing, clipboard with no brand. I'm Dr. Keene, they said, extending a hand. Viv shook it once, firmly. Let's begin. They sat at the long walnut table, sun catching the frost outside. For 40 minutes, Dr. Keene asked questions. Complex sequences, moral hypotheticals, memory cues. Viv answered each with precision. Named every president in reverse order, cited obscure capitals, told a story about the time she smuggled a coral pendant through Istanbul by hiding it inside a diplomatic envelope. Dr. Keene smiled. You've traveled. Viv tilted her head. I've endured. Back at her suite, Eli was waiting. She emailed the examiner before the visit, he said, holding up his phone. Suggested you were in a dissociative state and might fabricate intelligence to mask early decline. Viv's eyes narrowed. Can we prove intent? I already pulled the metadata. It was sent from her personal address, time-stamped 6 hours before Dr. Keene arrived. Perfect, Viv said. Then we escalate. Eli smiled grimly. Countersuit filed. Elder coercion and intentional estate interference. We'll serve her at lunch. At Gregory's firm in New York, the fallout hit by 3:12 p.m. An internal audit flagged 3 overlapping trust transfer requests with Viv's name misspelled, an old trick Gregory used to bypass legal review. By 3:45, he was placed on administrative leave. By 4 o'clock, the firm's compliance officer called to confirm they were cooperating fully with the state inquiry. The legacy he'd tried to pocket was evaporating, line by line, clause by clause. That night, Viv lit a candle on the windowsill. Not out of sentiment, out of signal. A storm was moving in, not of snow, of consequence. She picked up her pen, opened a fresh page in her journal. They filed to question my sanity. So I gave them memory, legacy, and law. And at the bottom, may their next strategy be smarter than their last. At 6:48 a.m., Chloe received a text from Gregory, suspended, email under review. We're being watched. She didn't respond. Instead, she called her mother. Viv let it ring. Then sent back a single message. Insanity is doing the same thing twice and expecting a trust fund. No emoji, no signature, just clarity. Brighter than the snow outside, and colder too. Because in the battle between legacy and lunacy, Vivian Cross had just flipped the script. Vivian Cross sat in the resort's private business suite, fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard, her breath slow and deliberate. Devon stood a few feet away, watching the cursor blink like a pulse. The message was direct, factual, and devo. Of drama, to whom it may concern. I am filing a flagged traveler alert on the following individuals, citing financial elder abuse, attempted coercion, and unauthorized access to protected accounts. Attached were dates, document screenshots, and video stills. Piper reaching for the will folder, Chloe's email to Dr. Keene, Gregory's altered transfers. The kind of file that didn't cry wolf, it simply howled with proof. Viv hit send. The message disappeared into the encrypted pipeline bound for TSA, the FAA, and a state-level financial crimes task force. Devon leaned over. You sure about this? She didn't look up. They booked a jet for this morning. Tail number 7 NFX. Gregory's name is on the flight plan. It's the one line they forgot to blur. Where to? Bozeman, Viv said. Montana. No extradition treaties involved, but they clearly think the snow will hide the stains. Devon gave a low whistle. They don't know the snow reports to you now. Viv finally smiled. Let's go watch a plane not take off. The tarmac at Aspen-Pitkin County Airport shimmered under mid-morning sun. From a quiet corner of the observation lounge, Viv stood beside Devon, binoculars in hand, coffee cooling beside her elbow. Across the runway, Chloe, Gregory, and Piper walked toward the sleek white Gulf Stream, a trio of polished panic. Gregory was on his phone. Chloe barked orders at a flight attendant. Piper adjusted a fur-lined hood and barely glanced up from her phone, but as they reached the stairs, something changed. An unmarked black SUV pulled alongside the aircraft. 2 men in aviation regulation jackets stepped out. One raised a hand, the other pointed at the jet. Within moments, the flight crew backed down the stairs. A clipboard was presented. Gregory's posture shifted, from annoyance to alarm. Viv's lips barely moved. Right on schedule. Inside the plane, everything stalled. FAA officers conducted an impromptu audit. The captain was pulled aside. Documentation was seized for routine inconsistencies, Gregory argued. Chloe threatened legal action. Piper live-streamed, briefly. Then her feed went black. Back at the resort, Viv opened a new email draft. Subject, timeline. Elder abuse pattern, verified no sender name, no signature, just attached evidence, and a message. For public interest and elder justice, review the enclosed timeline of events and misconduct connected to the Cross estate and its misuse by Chloe Shaw, Gregory Shaw, and Piper Shaw. She BCC'd 5 outlets, closed the laptop, and poured herself a whiskey. Within hours, the media swirl began. Aspen's local outlet ran a teaser first, Socialite Family Grounds, jet after anonymous tip. Then Denver picked it up, then the Post, then Bloomberg. The phrases echoed loud and ruthless. Elder abuse inquiry, attempted estate manipulation, jet halted mid-flight prep under federal scrutiny. Piper's next TikTok was flooded with comments. Wait, are you the one whose grandma burned your trust fund? Shame on Shaw, brand deal girls a brand risk now. By nightfall, her sponsorship with a skincare line was canceled. The press kit for her fashion collab went dark. A partnership she teased in Aspen, gone. Viv didn't gloat. She simply stood by the resort's wide-pane window, watching the jet sit still on the snowy apron, door open, wheels locked. They thought elevation meant escape, she said. Devon folded his arms. Turns out, altitude's just a clearer view of the fall. Viv nodded once, and we're only halfway down the mountain. Back in her suite, she opened the Fireplace app on her phone and stared into the digital flame for a long time. Then she wrote one line in her journal. They mistook silence for surrender. I mistook them for family. She underlined it twice. Outside, the wind picked up, and somewhere across the tarmac, Chloe finally realized this wasn't turbulence. This was a descent. The snowfall began as Viv returned to the Wexley. Not a blizzard, just that slow, deliberate kind that blankets consequence without sound. A fresh coat for a new chapter. The valet opened her door with something closer to reverence than routine. Welcome back, Ms. Cross inside. The concierge stood taller than usual. Your suite has been refreshed, and the chef prepared your favorite, lemon rosemary scones. Staff passed her with nods, not smiles. Not out of fear, but respect. The kind you don't demand. The kind you earn. She stepped into the elevator, scarf undone, a dusting of snow still melting in her hair. It was the first time in years she didn't feel followed, not by memory, not by fear, not by obligation, just gravity. Upstairs, Devon waited by the fireplace, 2 mugs in hand, 1 tea, 1 bourbon. Viv accepted the tea without comment, but her glance held something warm. Most clients don't take down a jet on my watch, he said. She raised an eyebrow. Most pilots don't know how to hold altitude without needing the spotlight. He handed her a folder. I took the liberty of draft. A proposal. She flipped it open. A contract. One page. His official offer to remain her full-time personal travel coordinator and logistical advisor. With one note scribbled at the bottom, "I prefer navigation with altitude and intent." She looked up. "You planning to disappear after Aspen?" "Not unless I'm told to." He paused. "You've got places to go, people to outlive." Viv smiled. "Let's chart it." That night she sat by the suite window, pen in hand, journal open, staring at the untouched scone on her plate. She hadn't spoken to Chloe since the tarmac, hadn't needed to. Her silence had become a language, not retreat, not coldness, surgical. Because when words lost meaning, silence rewrote the contract. A cream-colored envelope arrived the next morning, left at the front desk by a courier with no badge. Inside, a note in Piper's handwriting. No apology, no explanation, just 4 sentences. "College apps are due in 2 weeks. Everything's closed off now. I'm not asking for an inheritance, just tuition, please." Viv folded the paper once, then walked to her desk and opened her laptop. 3 clicks later, she was on the donation page for the Women's Aviation Network. She created a scholarship, anonymous, renewable, merit-based. In Piper's name, but not for her. The fund was earmarked for girls with no legacies, no safety nets, just sky in their eyes and frost in their veins. She hit submit and never mailed a reply. By afternoon, Eli called. "You've been cleared," he said. "Every transfer finalized. The revised trust is ironclad. Your assets are now protected under irrevocable clause, fully executed. Even the vault property. No one touches a dime without climbing Everest first." Viv let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. And the foundation? Chartered, funded, and booked through spring with site visits and board meetings. Viv looked around the suite, then past it, out to the mountains. "I want to schedule a legacy tour," she said. "Every place they told me I was too old to go, or too fragile, or too female." Eli chuckled. "That's a long list." "I've got time," she said, "and a travel advisor." Later that night, Viv opened her journal, wrote a single heading across the top of the page, "Destinations They Forbid." Below it, she listed the Monastery Trail in Bhutan, the polar flight over Hudson Bay, the cliff walk in Skellig Michael, the island Charles promised her, but never took her to. Each line was inked cleanly, with intent, because revenge wasn't always fire. Sometimes it was distance, measured, chosen, earned. Outside, the snow continued, quiet, indifferent, pure. But inside, a woman once called irrelevant was rewriting the wind, and the world, for once, was listening. The ballroom of the Wexley's north wing shimmered with soft lighting and sharper expectations. Velvet chairs arranged in half-moons. Glasses clinked with caution. The annual Estate Futures Summit had never hosted anyone quite like Vivian Cross. She stepped onto the stage in a midnight blue suit, silver threading that caught the light like veins of ice. Her only accessory, the Cross Foundation pin. Her presence, heavier than legacy, sharper than wealth. She didn't begin with greetings, or thanks. She began with truth. "They told me I was too old to manage my affairs, too sentimental to protect what I built, too generous to notice I was being robbed in silk gloves." The room shifted. "I'm not here to give a speech. I'm here to issue a storm warning." She laid it out, slide by slide, no fluff. The Elder Autonomy Trust. A replicable, legally armored structure that protected assets from intergenerational coercion, digital manipulation, and stealth devaluation. No child could alter it. No spouse could siphon it. No advisor could reroute it. The final clause read like a challenge. "Preservation is not paranoia. It's preparation." The crowd applauded, slow at first, then with a kind of anxious conviction. Viv stepped back from the mic and let the silence roar. Later that evening, Piper's name trended again, but not for skincare routines or influencer brunches. Screenshots leaked, her phone records, VPN usage, the metadata trails tracing digital tampering, from document scans to attempts at backdoor access through Gregory's firm. A third-party investigation confirmed it. Piper hadn't just known, she'd helped engineer it. By nightfall, her accounts were locked, brand deals dropped, followers vanished, her verified status was removed. Viv watched the news in silence, fingers curled loosely around a glass of champagne. She didn't toast, she just breathed, deep, clean, undistracted. Chloe lasted 2 more days. The Colorado Real Estate Commission revoked her license quietly, citing ethical misconduct and material misrepresentation during a property transfer involving the Cross Trust. She left Aspen under cover of a thin scarf and thick shame. No press, no statement, just a cab to a small airport and the sound of doors closing. In Devin's inbox, a wire confirmation chimed softly. From the Cross Foundation to Silver Halo Aviation, Veteran Initiative account amount $1,200,000 memo, legacy should fly on trusted wings. Attached was a single line, handwritten by Viv, build the fleet. Let no one be grounded without choice. Devin stared at the screen for a long moment, then closed his laptop, stood up, and began a checklist. Viv sat with Eli in the study, pen in hand, fresh will before her. Last revision, she said. He watched her sign. This one added a single name to the executor line. Devin Marks, no fanfare, no condition, just trust, the rarest currency of all. Eli watched her press the seal. You finally trust someone again. Viv met his gaze. Number I just stopped pretending the others earned it. The runway lights blinked in long, clean rows as the jet prepped for takeoff. Viv climbed the stairs with no hesitation, no scarf, no snack bag, only a single chilled bottle of champagne and a journal tucked under her arm. Devin stood by the cockpit door. Destination? She sank into the leather seat, buckled in, and looked out at the horizon. West. Then wherever the sun hasn't set yet. He grinned. No return flight? Not unless I say so. The jet rolled forward, engines humming, and as it lifted into the crisp, forgiving air, Viv whispered the line she'd once only written. Let the sky take what the bloodline tried to bury. She closed her eyes, not to sleep, to remember what it felt like to rise. Because this flight? It wasn't escape. It was arrival. The message arrived in Viv's inbox late one evening, hours after the jet had touched down on the golden runway outside Santa Fe. The subject line was blank. The sender was predictable, from pshaw.content@gmail.com to vivian.cross.foundation@securemail.org. Message: I was wrong. But you were cruel. We could have been something else. I don't need inheritance, just don't erase me completely. Viv read it once, then once more, before lifting her fingers to the keyboard. She didn't draft paragraphs, she didn't extend olive branches or salt the wound. She simply typed one line, better alone than surrounded by leeches. She hit send. Then she forwarded the entire thread to Eli with the note, archive under attempted emotional coercion, post-fraud phase. There was no venom in it, just record-keeping. And records, she had learned, were more powerful than revenge. The artist retreat sat on a mesa just outside Santa Fe, its adobe buildings bathed in apricot light, its silence broken only by wind and the occasional sound of brushes against canvas. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, honest, and wide open, exactly what Viv needed. Her room had a narrow bed, a clay fireplace, and a writing desk that faced west. There was no minibar, no curated playlist, just air and time. Each morning, she walked the dry trail behind the lodge, boots crunching over sun-bleached stone. At noon, she sketched ruins or made notes in her journal. In the evening, she sat in the communal kitchen with strangers who asked nothing of her but her first name. It was there, on the third night, that Devin forwarded a tabloid clip from an anonymous email. The headline read, like a requiem, Aspen heiress disgraced, Chloe Shaw loses license, home, reportedly living in RV outside Tulsa. Viv didn't gloat. She didn't even frown. She just clicked the article closed and opened her document titled Legacy Operations, Phase 3. There was still work to do. The next morning, as she stirred honey into her tea, a thick envelope arrived from her publisher. The return label read, The Atlantic Monthly, Editorial Division. She slid it open, expecting notes. Instead, she found a mock-up of the March issue cover, her byline stamped in silver foil. The Terminal Strategy, Notes from the Edge of Inheritance. By Vivian Cross. The essay had begun as a letter, then became a blueprint. And now it was a wildfire. Within 72 hours of publication, the Foundation's servers logged more than 6,000 inbound messages. Some were thank you notes from widows and veterans. Others were legal inquiries from retirees fearful of being erased by their children. One letter came from a 91-year-old retired trucker who wrote, I didn't think anyone knew what it felt like to be treated like a wallet with a pulse. Viv read each letter, not because she had to, but because she needed to. Each one was proof that silence, once weaponized, could become a signal. The Foundation's donations doubled by the end of the week. A second fund was approved for launch, the Cross Clause Initiative, aimed at legal literacy and elder autonomy workshops across all 50 states. Devin updated the board from a coffee shop in Chicago, his camera grainy, but his voice clear. Request volume just past forecast. We're gonna need more staff. Viv, watching from her little Adobe desk, nodded slowly. Good, build it. And you? Devin asked it. You ready for the next stop? She glanced at her handwritten itinerary, each destination inked with clarity. Bhutan, the Skellig Cliffs, Hudson Bay, then circled in red at the bottom, Seattle, where a small bookshop still kept her first travel column framed behind the register. Yes, she said. I'm not done rising yet. That night, the wind blew harder against the window pane, but Viv didn't flinch. She wrapped herself in the soft shawl Charles had given her long ago, not because she missed him, but because she finally understood what it meant to carry warmth without needing to return it. She opened her journal and added one more line. The sky isn't empty. It's just waiting for those who refuse to land. And for the first time, she slept without dreaming of gates, terminals, or snack bags. She dreamed of altitude. And this time, she didn't come down. The final signature came not with drama, but with absolute quiet. Viv sat alone in the library of a guest estate outside Taos, the kind of place where walls were made of packed earth and stories whispered more than echoed. The notary had already left. The documents, 3 sets, each bound with ribbon and witness stamps, lay neatly on the mahogany desk. It was done. The estate was now locked in an irrevocable trust, one with no loopholes, no discretionary clauses, and no room for reinterpretation. Devin Marks was listed as the executor. The Foundation was its own legal entity, answerable to no bloodline, and Vivian Cross's final affairs were, at last, untouchable. She capped the pen and pressed the seal one last time. Then she exhaled. Not relief, not triumph. Something quieter, a kind of settled gravity. The next day, Eli called with an update from Colorado. Piper's petition was tossed, he said, the sound of rustling papers in the background. Judge cited irrefutable evidence of intent to manipulate legal proceedings, including metadata and device history. It's over, Viv. She leaned back in her chair, letting the news sink in like warm sunlight. And Chloe? Served with a formal cease and desist this morning. She's no longer allowed to use your name in any business, media, or financial context. If she tries again, we go civil. Viv's lips curled faintly. Let her try. The echo chamber she built doesn't carry like it used to. Eli laughed. Number now, it collapses on her when she shouts. That week, Viv recorded a podcast with a small but respected platform that focused on women's autonomy and aging. She declined video, asking only for audio, her voice, and nothing else. The episode was titled, The Last Year of My Life I Actually Owned. In it, she spoke with calm precision about silence, power, and how inheritance often became the first battlefield of betrayal. She didn't name names. She didn't need to. She ended the episode with a sentence that made the host go still. They didn't rob me of wealth. They tried to rob me of authorship, but I've reclaimed the pen. A few days later, Devin joined her on the patio of the guest house. He held out a folder, inside of which were blueprint sketches and FAA application papers. New aircraft. Veteran-built, small charter class. It needs a name, he said. I was thinking, the VC Cross. Viv didn't even glance at the paperwork. Don't name it after me. Devon blinked. You sure? It's yours as much as mine. She looked out across the mesa, the dusk spilling lavender shadows over the brush. I don't want monuments, I want movement, she said. Call it whatever inspires the next woman who thinks she has no runway left, but leave my name out of the clouds. Devon nodded, understanding something deeper than instruction. On the final night of her stay, Viv hosted a small dinner in the courtyard under strings of dim gold light. The guest list was intimate, hand-curated. A former fighter pilot who had lost her pension in a fraud case, a young woman running a legal startup in Tulsa, a painter from Baltimore who taught free workshops to single mothers, a public school teacher turned community organizer. No photographers, no donor plaques, just bread, wine, and long pauses between laughter. At one point, someone asked Viv what she was working on next. She didn't offer a brand or a project or a press release. She just said, distance. The kind that frees you, not isolates you. That night, after the last glass was cleared and the final chair tucked in, she stood alone in the courtyard. The sky above was vast, unburdened. She thought of all the places she'd been told not to go, all the rooms she'd been pushed out of, all the stories that tried to end her before she had written her own. She opened her journal and wrote, "Legacy isn't what survives us. It's what resists them." She underlined it once, slowly, then looked up at the stars, each one a silent witness to the woman they failed to erase. And somewhere beyond the mesa, a wind carried her name without asking who it belonged to. It simply moved forward, like her. The morning sun spilled across the hillside in soft, honeyed layers, painting the adobe walls of the retreat in warmth that didn't need to be chased. Vivian Cross sat at the edge of the wildflower garden, shawl draped over her shoulders, the same one she'd once worn at a gala no one dared to forget. Her tea had gone cold, but she didn't mind. Some things didn't need heat to be strong. She looked out over the vast horizon, no longer seeking direction. This time, she simply witnessed it. The world was quieter now, not empty, not dulled, but unburdened. In the space where obligation used to grow like moss, there was now freedom, and in the spot where family once dragged behind her like chains, there was nothing but clean air. She was alone, but not lonely. And in every letter that arrived now, from veterans in Arkansas, grandmothers in Chicago, law professors in Vermont, she saw proof that legacy, when severed from greed, became its own elevation. The Cross Foundation had moved beyond her zip code. What began as a protection clause in a private estate had become a national model. Universities used her structure as a case study. Bar associations cited her name in ethics workshops. And at least 3 independent law firms had started entire practice groups modeled after the Elder Autonomy Trust. She didn't sit on the board anymore. She didn't need to. People who never met her now protected people like her. That was enough. The gala was held in Washington, D.C., in a building once reserved for marble egos and half-meant tributes. But this one felt different. No one read from teleprompters. No family gave forced speeches. There were no staged photo ops. Devon stood beside her in a tailored gray suit, the lapel pin subtle but unmistakable. Eli was next to him, older now, a little grayer, but just as sharp. The plaque unveiled that night didn't mention her children. It didn't list battles. It listed victories. For the unnamed, for the erased, for the woman who rewrote the rules without waiting for permission. By the time spring folded into summer, Chloe had faded from digital relevance. She'd moved twice in a year, once to a remote lakeside rental, once again when the media stopped calling entirely. Piper had scrubbed her online presence, rebranded once, then again, before sponsors stopped responding. They had become what they never feared enough: forgettable. Meanwhile, strangers whispered about Vivian Cross like she was an equation. Unsolvable. Undeniable. And that, too, was enough. Viv sat one afternoon at her desk, now relocated to a smaller home near the coast, and wrote herself a letter. It wasn't long. Just a few words, penned in deep blue ink. Well played. She folded the note, slipped it into a leather envelope, marked it, to be opened by no one but Wind. Her final instructions were tucked inside the Foundation's secure archive. Devon would know where to find them. No funeral, no marble, no forced gathering of people who pretended to know how I lived. Instead, she asked for one thing, a single flight, unannounced, untracked, scatter the ashes from the sky, over the same ridge she once crossed alone, long before the lawsuits and betrayals and forced holidays, where the wind moved sideways and the clouds opened like pages. She boarded the jet quietly one morning years later, long after most people assumed she'd retired for good. Devon was at the door. He didn't speak. He just nodded. She stepped into the cabin with no luggage, no entourage, no snack bag, just the small envelope in her lap. The cabin door sealed behind her. The engines whispered to life. As the plane lifted from the runway, Viv closed her eyes, not from fatigue, but from readiness. This wasn't escape. It wasn't even legacy. It was the answer to every silence she had survived. And when the flight reached cruising altitude and the sky opened up like it always did for her, Vivian Cross, executor of her own damn name, finally disappeared on her own terms. Not vanished. Claimed.